And welcome back to another episode of How's the Market. Today we're talking about Melbourne's inner east versus Sydney's inner east. Is there really a $5 million growth gap? And what are the main differences between them? What's better value between all of them? Like, I'm sure you've probably had a pretty good look at some of Sydney's suburbs, James. And
Yeah, it's
it's crazy.
Oh yeah, like when you do it side by side and you look at what Turak's worth versus Bellevue Hill and some of those eastern suburbs in our inner east, it's crazy how expensive the Sydney market is.
Yeah.
And that's like something I've always tried to do is like pick suburbs, not necessarily like that top end, but if you've got, say, Surrey Hills, so there's a Surrey Hills in Sydney, very similar to some of the suburbs that we have like Hawthorn and Richmond. It's just that more leafy. It's still quite hilly, Surrey Hills. It's got a tram, like light rail through it. So it really reminds me a lot of Melbourne. The pricing is probably $1 million more. Like a terrace home, you're probably, $3 million plus for a terrace in that area. They're usually like double stories. But yeah, I always think it's like a relative comparison just to look into these things. So I'm excited to jump into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll go through, do a couple of suburbs versus suburbs analysis from Melbourne and Sydney. And I find it really interesting because there's been so many times that we've had clients from Sydney that want to invest in Melbourne because they look at a suburb like Richmond or Abbotsford or something where you can get an inner city terrace. And they're like, this would be $3 million anywhere in Sydney with the same proximity to the city. Yet it's like what 1.5, 1.8 in some of the 10-kilometer ring radius.
You could probably buy like one of those single-fronted terraces, like single story, for 1.1. We've looked at a couple that are around need to be renovated.
I've bought them for clients, brand single-fronted terrace. 1.2. Yeah, for sure, heaps.
And then that sort of flicks around to Fitzroy as well. Like you look at that Fitzroy pocket, which we did the inner east versus the inner north, and that's like super comparable to the Sydney market. Just with again the proximity, like you look at it on a map. That's probably why Frankston's done so well because people just look at it on a map and go, oh, there's water there.
Beach.
Yeah, there's a beach. It's got a train. It's got a main like a CBD, like a satellite CBD. It's got to do well. So money, like just push the prices up significantly. So
and that is what has happened.
Exactly.
That's it. Well, we'll jump into it. But firstly, let's just do a bit of a quick market update as well. I think this is the first time we're doing a market update in 2026. We've actually had some auctions this previous weekend, just gone. I bid at a couple. 50% clearance rate from Tommy's end. But overall, there was 907 auctions in Melbourne with a clearance rate of 51.16 according to SQM, which is slightly above the clearance rate of what December was in 2025. But that was like, it ended poorly on like 45% clearance rate, which is pretty low from where we were. Even back August, September, it was sort of sitting around the 60% mark, and then it slowly trended downwards to 45s. And now 2026 has started in the low 50s. And then the top end of the market, so that's 1.5 mil plus across Boroondara, Stonington, Port Phillip and Yarra. There was only 16 auctions, so it is a fairly small sample size, but still from the 16 auctions, there was a 62.5% clearance rate, showing that the top end of the market has performed slightly better overall than the lower end. So I find that quite interesting because I think that the upper end of the market's actually struggling a lot more at the moment from what we've seen, which is interesting going into the topic that we're talking about today because it doesn't seem that's been the case in Sydney. But yeah, overall, I think that's like a pretty brief snapshot of where things are. Like,
yeah, it seems like it's still soft. Like you said, the clearance rate for you was 50%. So you bought one, missed out on one. That's sub 1 million on fire.
Ridiculous.
Like just going nuts.
Yeah.
But then again, in that sort of 1.2 to 1.5 bracket, like if that's sort of another segment of the market, you bought at auction, but it was passed in.
Honestly, these two these two auctions that we bid at, I think paint a pretty good picture of what's happening right now in the market. And honestly, it surprised me. Like we've been speaking about this and this exact thing for the last 6-12 months, talking about this market segmentation. But even just seeing the extremities of the market segmentation on the weekend at auction on the coalface was very, very different to what I expected. So we bid at one in South Yarra for a client, and this was it's a sub 1 mil. It was we've got a client with a $700,000 budget in there, and interestingly, like I priced this particular property at like a max of like 660 to 670 based on comparable sales in the area. And, you know, my client really liked it. It was, you know, it had some really cool standout features to this particular property. Old sort of walk-up brick style flats, beautiful views, hardwood timber floor, good quality. But the problem with it was that I was calling it a 1 bed plus a study, this particular property, because the second bedroom was 2.2 by 2.5. So, you know, fairly small, no robes or anything like that. And this particular property had like 6 bidders on it. And like I started the auction at the top end of the range, you know, and the range had already increased throughout the campaign. So, and, you know, kudos to the guys. They weren't underquoting this at all. Like that was reasonable value, 6 to 640 for a 1 bedder. Like one sold in the complex for 605 just a month ago, you know, a couple months ago, sorry. And yeah, so it sold for 730. And I spoke to like 3 agents on the weekend, even some other buyers agents that were there on the day. And we all sort of just said they've overpaid. Like that's a massive overpayment. But there's heaps of competition at that price point. Like I've spoke to brokers this week even that have been talking about how much these first home buyer like grant changes have sort of influenced the market in that section. And so that market's just sort of on fire and doing very well. And then we jumped over, so we missed out on that one and we headed into Glen Iris bidding on a property for an auction that was a property that needed renovating. It was a villa unit, 1 of 2, front of the block, quoted 1.3 to 1.4. We were looking at comparable sales in the area, 1.45 to 1.5, and I thought that represented reasonable value at that price point. The agents had said it's been, you know, very well inspected, you know, property. There was 3 to 4 bidders that they expected. We were one of the top buyers in that campaign. And
downsizes?
You know, well, the thing is, because it needed work, that's the biggest difference. So it is a downsizer product. It's a single level villa, you know.
Stairs, like pretty flat.
It's pretty flat. There's 2 or 3 stairs at the front and back, but that's it. There's plenty of space if you wanted to put that into like
massive
a ramped
courtyard.
area.
Like
huge front courtyard and back courtyard as well. So you've got a wrap around. You've got double garage, lock up garage. You're only 1 of 2. There's no body court. Beautiful tree-lined street on the Melbourne end of Glen Iris. And yeah, I mean, I was the only bidder.
Yeah, that is crazy to me because I think they're just great purchases. And if you can get in at that level, you know, like sub 1.5 for one of these, like there's so much room for potential, like especially if it's unrenovated, and that's what these guys are going to do. Like you've helped them previously on a purchase and they did quite well. So you've been through that whole journey with them, purchased, the fun of selling it, and now you've purchased again for them for round 2. So yeah, there is. I think there's so much value in those.
I'll tell you what, they're going to do extremely well out of this as well. Like they essentially passed into us at 131. The reserve was 1.4, which again, you know, shout out to Marshall White. I think that's a very fair reserve that they had. It was in the quoted range, and essentially we just didn't move. And after like a 30, 40 minute passing negotiation, we ended up securing at $2,000 more than our final bid, which was at the bottom of the range, you know, for properties like this, which is a rare occurrence to happen. Don't expect that for every auction that you go to or all the passing negotiations that you're working on. But yeah, I just find that so interesting. I think that we were just able to buy really well for these clients again. They'll do a cosmetic renovation. I'm sure this thing will be worth close to 2, if not more. Yeah. From just doing some updates cosmetically to the property, and they'll do very, very well out of that again.
So good.
So interesting. But yeah, jumping into the Melbourne versus the Sydney, I think that's a good market update though. But
oh yeah, it's great.
And I think that actually is a pretty good segue into what's happening between Melbourne and Sydney, because the markets are so different at the moment, especially when you look at the top end. And I think that's what Sydney is known for. So like, and if you were trying to think of like a family that has the brief of wanting to buy, you know, a prestigious family home, for example, like if you looked at 2 families in Melbourne and Sydney, they've got the same income, it's the same sort of household dynamics. They still want to have like a character-filled, prestigious home, and they're looking at Sydney and Melbourne. Very, very different briefs, like very, very different price points. It's like if you were looking to spend 8 mil in Sydney, what are you going to get versus 8 mil in Melbourne? Like, you know, what do you think the overall numbers are going to be for clients in that sort of dynamic?
we're looking at medians, right? So I look at the median for Toorak and it's $5 million at the moment. That must be a dwelling price, or is that a house price? Like,
That'd be dwellings. It'd have to be. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing that gets confusing with a lot of these numbers. Like, you see them and they pull up, medians on certain areas, but try and find a house that's under 5 mil in Toorak. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't find them.
Yeah, it'd be like 400 meters. It'd be like a townhouse you'd get, or
Yeah,
like,
they'd be super rare, and it'd be significantly compromised. Like, any of the properties that I've seen and have gone through in Toorak are over 10 million. Even for some substantial townhouses, they're well over 5. So that part of it's confusing, like when you just look at the comparables. But the money that you can, the what you get for your money is drastically different as well.
Yeah.
So I think up in Bellevue Hill in Sydney, the blocks are going to be a lot smaller, right? Like, there are some larger blocks, like there's some 600, 700, 800 square meter blocks, but a lot of those trophy homes that do drive these, $10, $20 million price tags in Toorak are going to be large lots.
huge lots in comparison. Yeah. And so if we look at Toorak versus Bellevue Hill, so yeah, Toorak's median's circa 5, whereas Bellevue Hill is circa 12 now, which is very interesting. And even just looking at that, I find crazy when you compare how the performance of the markets over the last 12 months. Toorak has definitely gone down, if anything. It's not like it's done any sort of major rises. And then Bellevue Hill, according to the suburb profiles of realestate.com, has gone up 18.6% in a 12-month period, with the median growth on those prices has literally just trended up perfectly in nearly a straight line over the last 6-7 years, where Victoria has been flat at best. And it's not like a lot of the homes in Toorak are selling for major losses, but the days on market has expanded drastically and they are becoming harder to sell. Some of them are selling for losses, though. It's not like it's all sort of sunshine and rainbows. So, mate, that is a massive difference. It's pretty much double the price to be in Bellevue Hill over Toorak.
Yeah,
you are getting literally just smaller block sizes, but you do have the prestige of the waterfronts and everything else. When
That's
you're in
the
one of
big
those
difference,
areas.
right? Like, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago around, Toorak versus a couple of other inner east suburbs. And it doesn't have a lot going for it. Like, realistically, you're paying for Toorak, the brand.
Yeah.
There's very few homes that are on the water. Like, we do have the Yarra River that goes through, but there's not many homes on the water, and you can't get a glimpse of that either. So they tend to be these large compounds. They're big homes with huge gates, maybe a tennis court, and then, you drive some of the streets and they're just filled with landscaping utes. You know what I mean? Because they're just doing all the work behind the fences. That's kind of what those streets
That's
are.
what it feels like to me. It's like a big construction site sometimes in Toorak.
There's just always stuff happening there, and it's usually people working on the property. But yeah, tree-lined streets, gorgeous streets, and nice to be in that space. But when you look at that versus, say, Vaucluse, which is similar to Brighton, like it is on the water, or Brighton is our version of Vaucluse, but it doesn't have cliff-top homes. Vaucluse has these, cliff-top homes. Their architecture is a little bit different. They're quite, I don't know, they're not as pretty as Melbourne homes. A lot of people in Sydney will even say, I love the housing in Melbourne. I love the homes in Melbourne. They're a lot more, aesthetically pleasing. But you just have to look out into the ocean, and that's what you're paying for. Sometimes views can be 30, 40, 50% of the value of the location. And when people do think of Australia, if you're going to choose one photo to go and you are submitting that to say, hey, this is a representation of Australia, it's probably going to be the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. You know what I mean? It's just going to be that photo. And that's what people recognise and why people want to live there. So all of that international impact. But it's the scarcity. So Sydney's heavily landlocked. They can't do anything out there. That's why there's so many units for sale. And units, I think, in Sydney are very differently, perceived as they are in Melbourne, or versus Melbourne. We think of units, apartments, as I don't want to live in an apartment. I want to live in a house. Whereas in Sydney, it's very, very different. They're okay to live in apartments. Like a lot more people do live in apartments because of the lack of supply, like the lack of housing, actual homes.
Purely geography.
Yeah. Because you look at it and it's, well, yeah, where else are they going to go? There's water that way and there's the city that way. So if we're isolating the inner east, the eastern suburbs of Sydney, they can't do anything. So that's why the price just keeps going up and up and up and up.
And that is honestly what creates it to be so amazing, though, because you look at somewhere like Bellevue Hill, where you sort of got Bondi on one side and the CBD on the other, and water on both sides. Like,
it just goes around it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool as well, like some of those beaches that you can go to, like in between there. Like it is a good lifestyle. If you're thinking of an Aussie lifestyle, especially if you're from London, that's why there's so many people from the UK that live in that. In those eastern corridors, is because that's their vision of Australia. Like I can go to the beach on my lunch break. I can get a tan in the morning, and after work and all this kind of stuff.
Join a running club.
So many of them. Like I know tons of UK based or like people that were from the UK that live in there. Heaps of Irish people as well. But yeah, ton of people from the UK.
And it's interesting talking about the units as well, because the biggest sales in Australia was split between, I was trying to find where the top 10 sales were. The number one sale is still argued between them, because it's either the Barangaroo unit, which is the penthouse, as the highest sale. So there you go from in terms of a unit perspective, or it's the Kunak property in Toorak as the highest sale. So it's either Toorak or right in the city for Sydney as the most expensive home sale. And then as you go down the list of the top 10, it's pretty much all just Sydney.
Yeah.
But there's a couple from Toorak. And the ones that are from Toorak, you look at them and compare them. So even if you compare the Kunak property in Clendon Road in Toorak to the Barangaroo Towers, it's a triple story penthouse or a hectare of Toorak. Isn't that an insane difference for a similar price point? Like in terms of prestigious suburbs, a hectare of land in the top suburb of Melbourne versus
it's nuts.
A triple story penthouse in Sydney. But I think that goes to show a lot of the difference of what's out there.
And that's, people just realize that now in Sydney, that there's no more and that's what's really driven this scarcity factor. If you look at other, investment opportunities or investment grade, things that we have in this world, right? So there's cars, there's number plates, there's watches, there's all these rare items, jewelry, property is one of them. But if we're going to compare those things, if there's limited numbers of them, I love cars, I like watches, all of that kind of stuff. So I do look at these things, but there's insane amounts of money that gets transacted on rare items. Even number plates in Victoria, a three-letter number plate is worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
For a freaking piece of metal.
It's insane.
You know what I mean? It's insane. If you're in double digits, so if you've got 10 or 11 or 12, and that's it, your number, it's in the millions, millions for a piece of metal, because you can't get it anymore.
Scarcity.
Right? It's just pure scarcity. So that's how people are really starting to look at Sydney, and have for quite some time. I'm not going to be able to get it. But if I can, so I'm not going to be able to get it in the future, because it's just going up and up and up and up and up. And there's enough people there to drive that, the supply and demand. It's just that
never ending.
It's just that age-old tale of supply and demand that just keeps pushing it.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the big differences, that Sydney just has that unlimited demand, and it's fueled by the prestige factor. It's fueled by the international sort of appeal, the brand of it from a national perspective. It's fueled from celebrities, but I think it's also just a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, in that because of all of these things, it just keeps going up. The fact that Bellevue Hill has done 18%, based on 70 home sales in the last 12 months in terms of year-on-year growth, which is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And we just don't have that down here. But I think I want to read off some stats quickly, because I think this is very, very interesting information from a snapshot of comparing the two and where value lies. So Toorak versus Bellevue Hill, median 5.2 versus 10 mil. So it's a 2 times difference between those two suburbs, which are arguably the more prestigious ones. Hawthorn in Melbourne has got 2.9 mil. Mosman has 6.1 mil in Sydney, which is a 2.1 times difference. Kew, another one of our brilliant suburbs that has the big heritage appeal. Like we've got the heritage estates in Kew. That's a 2.63 median price, with Rose Bay at 4.65, so a 1.8 times difference. Malvern 2.96, Double Bay 5.42, so about 1.8 times. Camberwell, which is again got one of our big period estates, the Tara estate, it's roughly 2.6 mil for a median. Vaucluse 9.5 mil, so that's a 3.7 times difference with some of our major suburbs. Brighton, again, 3.19 by our beach here. Rose Bay, 4.65 mil, so it's a 1.5 times difference. And then Balwyn, finally, is just one of the big home areas in Bundara, 2.87, Double Bay at 5.42, so it's a 1.9 times difference. So essentially all of these suburbs are showing roughly an average of Sydney being double the price of Melbourne for a very, very similar product in what I still think is the second greatest city in Australia. So it's
I think it's the greatest.
I could argue that too.
I'm definitely more open to Sydney now. Like I used to be staunch Melbourne, but unfortunately we're just in this hole at the moment. And not to get all political, I try to keep out of that stuff, but it's a bit sad, to be honest. Like you can't go away, like you can't sort of avoid it at the minute. You can go on social media or anything, and it's just this $15 billion of criminal activity or whatever's happened in the big build that, the Allen government has sort of, turned a blind eye to. You can't avoid it. And that only gets blown up. It's usually where that thing happens, like whenever there's a news story that occurs in a city or a location, it's really not that bad, but there's news articles and the news outlets make it sound so horrible that everyone else in Australia, and then it goes overseas, everyone else in the world just goes, holy crap, like avoid Melbourne. They're in massive debt.
Yeah.
Things are going to blow up. Like things are going to, totally fall off a cliff. So that's definitely not helping the case. Yeah.
Well, I mean, from a political standpoint, we do have the highest debt per person in Australia by like a long way. Could be contributed from a bit of overspending by the government on some of the most ridiculous freaking big build projects.
It's actually sickening. Like, again, I try not to get involved in this kind of stuff too often. And when I do, it's because I really believe that there's a problem. And I think we have a major problem in Melbourne. And as I said, it's sad because someone that is like, I'm patriotic. I'm like, if you cut my veins, it's Melbourne, you know what I mean? Like through and through. And it's someone like me to turn around and go, I would actually consider leaving. Like I'd consider leaving to go to another state. You can only imagine how many other people are thinking that way. Yeah. And that's what causes these soft spots, because it is questionable, like living here. So why would you want to move here from another state? Like if you're in Queensland, why the hell would you want to come to Melbourne at the moment? Like, yeah, if everyone from Melbourne's trying to escape it or thinking about leaving it, that can have a huge impact as the market or to the market because of that supply and demand issue. Yeah, the demand just starts to drop. Well, which, if you were to flip it and you're going to be contrarian, that could be an opportunity.
Interestingly, I've had this conversation, funnily enough, on the politics side of things in the contrarian perspective twice in the last 24 hours with people. For starters, we've had 3 people this week reach out that want to now leave Perth and move to Melbourne because they can't afford Perth and they want to get in at the bottom of the Melbourne market cycle thinking that things are going to change. And that I just find extremely interesting. People can no longer afford Perth and want to move to inner Melbourne. What the hell is going on there? Yeah. So that's like one thing that I'm starting to see, that more people are now starting to flip and look at Melbourne no longer just as an incredible city, but also an opportunity.
And affordability, right?
From an affordability standpoint, which is just absolutely insane. Like I think I've had multiple people say that they would love to live in and invest in Melbourne, assuming government change.
I mean, that's the long-term view, right? So if you did have that long-term view and Like, I never tell anyone that's buying property, property is not transactional. It's not a 1 and 2 year thing. If you are doing that, like we've spoken about our clients before, they're viewing it as a business, right? Like their thought process on how they're purchasing and how they do things is very different. There are a lot of people that just come into investing or come into property with a very, very short mindset. You should be thinking 10 to 15 years. Like 9 times out of 10, I've told people, you have to hold this property for 15 years and you have to just set and forget and don't even worry about it because there'll be all these changes. Yeah. And this is just one of them. It's a blip. It's a road bump. We will get through it. As I said before, it's not ideal, but if you're thinking long term, and yes, Melbourne is probably at the lowest point, especially from that view, like, you know, what's going on with the government, that opportunity, if you could buy now, we're going to have to weather the storm for at least a few years of just crap, like dealing with things and taxes on top of taxes. Like they've introduced a pet tax, you know, like they've doubled the pet tax, which is just wild. How low they're stooping, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we've probably got a little bit of shit to eat, but we will get through it. And then in 5, 6, 10 years time, hopefully those people that did invest or buy in Melbourne, doesn't have to be an investment property, or if you've bought your own a rock and you can weather that storm and just get on with your life, will probably be in a much better position.
And then, well, ultimately, to round this out, all of the long-term data suggests that especially the top-end suburbs across Melbourne and Australia in general will revert to the mean. And I think there's been a clear underperformance from the mean for Melbourne's top-end suburbs, as well as Melbourne just in general over the last 5 to 6 year period, like pretty much from 2021 after we had the silly COVID boom, which was more of a national craziness. That I do believe will revert at some point in time. And I think that Melbourne is, from looking at the data, closer to the bottom of a cycle. And when that cycle flips and kicks off, like, I mean, it's sort of already started in 2025, and there is some pockets of Melbourne that have already done 20% growth in a 12-month period of time. When will that kick over to the rest of Melbourne? I couldn't tell you, but I do think that there is great value when you look at Melbourne compared to especially Sydney, and where, like, from a 20-year standpoint, Melbourne is now the cheapest in comparison relative to Sydney that it has been over a 20-year period. And I think that does show that there is really strong cases for value here. And I'm not going to be surprised at all if there is a bunch of people that are selling in Sydney for the prices that they're achieving now, and then absolutely capitalizing on better homes in better locations and have money in the bank by moving down to Melbourne.
It'll turn for sure, because there will be those people that are contrarian. That bottom end of the market, like when we're talking, and it's not degrading that end, it's just the bottom end of the market's quite wide, right? So sub 1 million, there's going to be more buyers in that pool. So I think that'll probably just do its thing. There's not really going to be too much change. Yes, there'll be some people that drop off because they read the news. But it's when you get up into that, second, third type of purchase, people will be more reluctant to sell and like do that transition. So that's probably where the opportunity is, right? Because those people might just like think a little bit more on what they're doing. But me personally, like, I want to buy in Melbourne right now. Like, I haven't bought a property in a few years, and we're going to buy in Melbourne just because of this opportunity.
Agreed. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in to How's the Market. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave us a quick review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps more people to find the show. And if you are looking for help purchasing your next property in Melbourne, if you're from Sydney or Perth, feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to assist you on your journey. Until next week, we'll catch you guys then. See ya.
See ya.